married. And then the third time was with my wife and my best friend a few years ago. And I'd like to one day when my son's old enough, or maybe a few sons are old enough, to take them up there, because it's an experience that I want to go through with them, that firing experience. You know, it's hard. And there's a special bond from people who've come together and overcome in a situation like that. And I see that bond being forged by all these people in this room, because we've got a mountain. And there's times when you're on a wind-blown, knife-edge ridge, and you know that there's a really good chance that not everybody in your expedition is going to live. And they need somebody to pull them together and seize the day and say, we can make it. And we can do it, and we can try, and let's press on, and let's be victorious. And you can just gripe and be defeated and characterized by the horrible situation that's around you, or you can be what that horrible situation calls for. That's in our nature as human beings. And that's what we need to do. You know, it's like when you're sailing out, you know, another time when I felt this feeling is when, you know, I'm out sailing on my sailboat. And I remember I got way far out from shore. You know, there's about a 3-day jaunt where there's, you know, rocky cliffs and there's no place to hide. And you got to go down there for 3 days and hope for good weather. And you can't predict the weather 3 days out. So you just wait till it's good and hope it holds. And we were cruising down there. Actually, it wasn't we. It was just me that time. My wife wasn't with me. She was back in town. I was out sea cucumber diving. And I'm going down this rocky shore, and I'm about, you know, 25 miles offshore. And this horrible, horrible storm comes in. And it came from off the land, which is the worst kinds, because then they're really cold. They come out of Canada. And it comes pouring over the mountains, and I'm out here on this boat by myself, and I'm having to make it to shelter. And I see just the blackness on the horizon. And I'm listening on the VHF radio, you know, seas 25 feet. You know, shoot, my boat's only 35 feet, you know, small craft advisory, you know, and then the wind gets really tight, and those waves get stuck really close together. That's when they're dangerous. It's not, you can have a 60, 70-foot sea, no problem. If they're rollies that are nice and far apart, and you just go down one and up the, no problem. But when you get a 25-foot sea that is, you know, 25 seconds apart, and they're stacked in there close, boom, boom, they start pounding your boat, they start coming over, they start filling it, you know, if your pumps can't keep up, you sink. And they usually don't find you, and you can't swim very well, and the water's like just warm enough to be moving in Alaska. And here you see this storm out there. And so this is a different kind of situation where you're in a position of relative comfort, but you see this hell on the horizon. And you know that you've got a challenge. You've already been up for a day and a half, and you know you're going to have to be up for another day and a half to pilot this boat in. And if it gets worse, it might drag on further, and you're going to have to go with no sleep. You're not going to be able to leave the tiller to eat or drink much. You might be able to lash it down just for a minute, enough to go get some water and a cracker or something. And this is going to, you don't have anybody to trade off with. You don't know if you're going to get exhausted. You don't know if you're going to get washed off of the boat. And you know, it's catch-22. If you tie yourself to the boat and it flips over, sailboats, if they're battened down correctly, they will right themselves. But when you got all those sails, it can take, you know, 6-7 minutes for those sails to move through the water while that keel pulls the sailboat over. Then once that sail gets in the air, it comes back up. You know, and you can right a sailboat that way. So if you tie yourself, well, then are you going to drown while you're underneath there? Or are you going to not tie yourself on there and maybe get washed off your sailboat and have it go and you stay? And so you're thinking about all these things, you know, and lots of dangers, and you've got to reckon with this. If you haven't reckoned with what might be yet to come, you'll be crippled by what's at hand. And you know what? We've got some dark clouds on the horizon. And we need to honest up and talk about those and what we're going to do. Otherwise, we're going to be useless at what's at hand. if you haven't gulped it down and say, yeah, I might die in that storm, and now I'm going to get ready for it. If you just sit there and you just stare at them, not wanting to let your mind go through the process that would say that you might die, you're going to be useless. And I wrote a poem. I usually don't read my poems to people, but since it's Montana, I'll do this. I wrote this poem before I sailed into that storm. And we've been in a lot of storms, but this one just sort of hit me in a special spot. Maybe it's because my wife wasn't with me. There's been good, there's been sad times I've had, but death will have no sting. As I offer my soul to an angry sea, my lips will softly sing. For the time has begun for my toil to be done. My hands now work with ease. For I'm made anew, and I'll wait for you on the shore beneath the seas. Once you've accepted that you're done, you can begin. And that's what we need to do here tonight. That's what we have to do. That's what our children need from us. That's what our country needs. And let's not confuse our government with our country. They're different. And you know what? There's people all across this country that are rising to the occasion, that are meeting the challenge. And there's going to be a bright page on history. Now I want to talk about how we've done that in Fairbanks. So it's not just an idea. All right? How many of you know who Sun Tzu is? I don't either. I just know his name. But he wrote some really good stuff about war. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War. You know what the 13th rule of war is? Get your enemy to do useless things. They're using that one on us. All right? And we need to recognize it. How many of you can guess what the first rule of war is? Declare war. Seems elementary, but it's really true. If you haven't identified who your enemy is, you will never defeat them. And we need to identify who our enemy is. That is anybody who would threaten or purpose or connive any scheme to take away our liberty, and anyone who cooperates with them. Basically, federal government and people who take their money. And, you know, the international superstates and whatever like that. All right, so declare war. Now, let me tell you, once there was a cultural shift in tide in Fairbanks to accept this challenge, here's how we did it. First, we knew that we needed to do things that weren't contingent upon government cooperation for their success. Amen? That would be silly to think that you know if you've declared an enemy that you are only going to defeat him once you get their permission to defeat them. You'll be waiting a long time. You'll be sending a lot of letters to your congressman before you get one back that says, all right, guys, now's the time. Beat us. All right? Here's what happened. Here's how it all started. I do a lot of TV and radio in Fairbanks, talking about economics mainly and legal theory and stuff like that. And somebody called me after a radio show, and they said, what are we going to do about all these gun laws, man? They're just coming down like a hailstorm. I said, well, I don't know. Let's get together at Denny's and talk about it. 150 people showed up. There were so many people that the fire marshal showed up and was trying to kick us out. And I said, okay, well, hold on, you know, hold your questions, you know. And he wound up staying for the whole meeting and getting right on board and forgot to kick us out. So here's what we wrote up in Denny's. That first meeting, 150 people. The next meeting, 750 people. The next one is about 1,600. Next one, 5,000. Just blah, 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 blah. Went up. Now we got to rent the Carlson Sports Arena, big football stadium, to hold these meetings in. We had Rick Jor come up and speak for us at one of them. We wrote this declaration, all right? This isn't a petition. A petition is asking somebody to do something for you. And you know what? I'm kind of sick of asking other people to do stuff for me. I'm going to tell some people what I'm going to do. You know, the first thing they teach you when you go to counseling is the only person you can change is yourself.